Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Well, it's good to see you, friends. I'm going to invite you to turn to two places this morning. I invite you to turn to Matthew chapter 5, and we'll start there in verse 15. And then you can take one of your other fingers, flip the few pages over to Matthew chapter 13, because we will get there. So Matthew chapter 7, we'll start in verse 15, then we'll go over to Matthew chapter 13. I'm going to open with a moment of honesty. I don't like going to the doctor. I really don't. I was just thinking about this. You know, I had not done like a full blood panel in like 7 years. So who's over there groaning over here to my left? I didn't need the judgment. I'm just reporting stuff to you people. 7 years, you know? And then it's kind of like, you know what? I probably need to go in and get some things checked out. You know, and then it turns out I light some of that stuff up like a Christmas tree. And this was what I said to my doctor, Kristen Sheldon. She's great. So if you're looking for somebody, she's awesome. But I was like, see, this is why I don't come to you. Yeah, you come in, you might find something, and then it becomes a whole thing. And ain't nobody got time for that. Y'all know what I'm saying? Nobody. But here's the thing, you make time for that. You do. Because depending on what you find, you're glad that you found it when you did, so that you don't have worse things down the road that you've got to deal with. You know what I'm saying? And so now, just a vow before me, you, and the good Lord that's in this place, I will do a full blood panel every 5 years, and we'll see how we look, right? I don't like going to the doctor, but I do have this question, kind of applicable to today. How do you measure your spiritual health? How do you measure your spiritual health? Now, there are some things that we typically think of. I've got this lovely couple up here. You got one couple that's getting, ripped and fit and looking all the things. But the second picture is actually the same couple, just with a little less personal maintenance. You know what I'm saying? Some of the things that we typically think of when we think of our spiritual health are things like this. How much time do we spend in the Word? Like just daily time in the Word. By the way, everything I'm going to say here is good. Good. Daily time in the Word. Or how about this? Time in prayer per day. Or we think of something like this. How many acts of service have I done kind of in this last week or so? Or maybe even this, the number of times that you've had a conversation with somebody that doesn't know Jesus, but you're talking with them about Jesus. Those are good things, right? And when you think about this, how do I measure my spiritual health? We kind of go there, but Jesus gives us something else that we might want to think about, and that's why we look at Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 15. He says this, beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. Now, if you stop for just 1 second, Jesus is saying there are false teachers out there. There are people that are saying things that are categorically false about God. And you've got to exercise a lot of self-control with who you give your time and your attention to, because if you're listening to false teaching and you're giving yourself to false teaching, then your life is guided by, you guessed it, the false teaching and the places that takes you to and the results that go there. He says, so beware of that. He says, you can identify them by their fruit, that is, the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, you can identify people by their what? Actions. You can tell. So when you're asking this question, what are some ways that I could gauge my spiritual health? Jesus gives the answer of, well, take a look at the fruit of your life. Take a look at the fruit. Fruit is how you know, it's how you tell, it's how you measure. This got me really thinking, growing up, my grandfather, so I grew up in the same town as my grandparents, which is great. We're up there in the thriving metropolis of Mineola, Texas. And out, behind his house, he had 5 acres, and a significant portion of that, he had committed to growing a garden. And a lot of the garden he would take and he would just go and give to people that didn't have a lot. and I would make runs with them, in the back of the truck. Back when the law allowed you to do that, I would sit in the back of the truck, go take food, and we would put it by the door, and then we would drive away. And people that didn't have a lot had some food. And then there were people like me, we ate it too, right? But when I think about working with my grandpa, working in the garden with him, it was more for him than me, at least in terms of daily work, but it was a lot of work. Usually he would call and be like, hey, I need Jeremy to come help, or Michael or Gary, my two older brothers. And it was a lot of work. I mean, one, you had to get the tiller out and just bust the ground up. But it wasn't just that. You had to pull rocks, you had to pull weeds. And it always blew my mind how much of that stuff could actually settle in the dirt from last year, right? I'm like, we just did this. And then you would have to do it all over again because it was a whole new crop of all the bad stuff, watering, pulling weeds, prepping the ground. Y'all understand what I'm saying? And then after that, you're putting the seed in, and then you still have to do the work of taking care of the seeds that you dropped in the ground, watering, all that, keeping the weeds out of the way. But I also learned that the soil that you put it in really matters. The dirt matters. And up around Mineola, boy, you can run into a lot of red dirt, and good luck with that. It's hard to grow stuff on red dirt. It's gonna be a challenge. But when the plants are in the ground, or the seeds are in the ground, and before they sprout, there is a lot going underneath the dirt that we are unaware of. It's the stuff that we're not seeing. And the truth is, our souls are a lot like that, aren't they? Our souls are a lot like that. There's tons of potential in us that require daily care. I mean, you think about a seed in the ground, it goes through weather to get to a plant. It goes through sun, it goes through rain, wind blows through, all the stuff that is necessary for spiritual growth. So if there's this question, how do I know what my spiritual health looks like? The thing that I've got to start looking at is, what is the fruit of my life? I mean, when you think about it, a tree that is drawing life produces fruit in season. In season, when it's supposed to. Back in the day, we even used to call that area of the grocery store the produce section. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It's what it produced. You go to the produce. But what about a tree that isn't drawing life? Oh, man, that's a different question. So this morning, what we're really going to be focusing on for this series that we're in on the deeper things is this. This morning is about prep work. Prep work. Getting the dirt ready to yield some spiritual green beans. Y'all following what I'm talking about now? So let's do it. Jesus gives us an example on how this works over in Matthew chapter 13, where I said to mark your second part. Let's go there. On that day, Jesus went out of the house and was sitting by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and he sat down while the whole crowd stood on the shore. And then he told them many things in parables, saying, consider the sower who went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and birds came and devoured them. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it didn't have much soil, and it grew up quickly since the soil wasn't deep. But when the sun came up and it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up, choked it. Still other seed fell on the ground and produced fruit, some 100, some 60, some 30 times what was sown. Let anyone who has ears listen. And then the disciples came up and asked him, why are you speaking to them in parables? I mean, of all the things for the disciples to come up and ask, that was what they did. Why are you talking in parables? And Jesus said, okay, I'll answer you. Because the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given for you to know, but it has not been given to them. It's basically a way of saying, hey guys, I'm talking to a large crowd here. And while you've got this relationship with me, I'm trying to share the secrets of the kingdom of God so that they can have what you've got. And I'm talking to them in ways that's gonna make it click. The deeper things of God, I'm gonna communicate in ways that makes it hit to their reality. That's why I'm talking in parables. I think that's one of the reasons. I think there's more than one reason. But I do wanna say this up front. And for those of you that are note takers, here's the first thing for you to write down. What this reminds us of, first of all, is this. Insights into God come from God. Insights into God come from God. I mean, God has ways of speaking. He can speak through a pastor. He can speak through a friend. But the ultimate insight is revealed from him through them. One of the things that we do struggle with, just in general, is a thing called confirmation bias. You know what I'm talking about? Confirmation bias. This is the idea behind confirmation bias. It is the tendency to accept evidence that confirms our beliefs and to reject evidence that goes against them. We all tend to struggle with this. It's reality. Here's another way of understanding it. This sounds true to me, whatever it is that you're listening to, because it already connects with things that you tend to want to believe are true already. That's confirmation bias. The reason I bring that up is because it points to a deep truth in Matthew chapter 13. Our hearts are like that. Our hearts are just like that. We can become blind to things that are right in front of us because we don't want to see it. It's almost like, it's almost like you not wanting to admit that your rival team, whoever your rival is, pick him out right now, that your rival team was actually better than your team. It's hard to admit that, isn't it? Because you never want to say of your rival that they are better than you. And so you start to look for things that, so to speak, don't really speak to the reality of it, but confirm the things that you want to believe about it. Well, have we just had our starting pitcher? But otherwise, we're better than you. And you lost 13-0, right? Now, I don't know, their bats were pretty good, right? You see the things that you want to see. But there's something else that's embedded in this first point, and it has to do with Jesus speaking in parables. Like, why take that approach? Because the truth is, sometimes what we need so that we can hear what God is trying to say to us is a less straightforward approach. It's a less straightforward approach. Because a straightforward approach, like the punch in the throat, the straightforward approach often makes us defensive and even dismissive. You fight back. Like, we're not asking the question, is what they're saying about me true? But because of the approach, we react. Do you remember this amazing story going back to 2 Samuel chapter 12? We're reminded of David, King David. And King David had committed adultery, at least. I mean, some scholars will debate, was it sexual assault on Bathsheba? I'm not even trying to solve that today. Here's what we know at best, is this man was deep in sin. We know that. So he had had a sexual relationship with a woman that was not his wife. And to make it worse, to cover it up, he had her husband murdered. That's not good. And then you go over to 2 Samuel chapter 12, and there's this amazing moment from a prophet named Nathan. And you think about his approach. He comes up to King David and he says, hey, I need to talk to you about somebody. He's like, okay. He says, so there's this guy, he's poor. He's got this lamb, but there's another guy that's rich. He's got like gobs of stuff. And long story short, the rich guy didn't want to like use his stuff. Instead, he went and took the one little ewe lamb from the poor guy and used it for himself. What do you want to do? And David goes, that guy should die. I mean, at least give 4 lambs back, right? But really, that guy should die. And Nathan goes, you're the guy. It's you. Now, what does David do now? You're stuck. He basically just said, I should die. I want to remind you of something here. This is part of what sin can do. Even to a believer, sin can blind your heart. Believe it. It can blind your heart to things you don't want to see. I love what the philosopher Blaise Pascal said. He said, in faith, there's enough light for those who want to believe and enough shadows to blind those who don't. Human beings must be known to be loved, but divine beings must be loved to be known. Profoundly true. But Jesus goes on. Think about verse 12. He says, for whoever has, more will be given to him. Whoever has, more will be given to him. And he will have more than enough. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Now, I want you to think about this. Because this is the second thing for those of you that are kind of note scribblers, and it's this. What you do with the truth can affect whether or not gives you more insight into the truth. What you do with the things that God has already revealed to you can affect whether or not God is going to reveal more of him to you. Think of it like this. Go back to Luke chapter 16, another parable. It's a famous parable. You have the rich man and Lazarus, and they're dead. And you've got the rich man is in Hades, and you've got Lazarus is in the bosom of Abraham. Not a bad place to be, right? And long story short, what happens is the rich man looks up at Abraham and he says this. He says, would you send a messenger to my brothers so the same fate that has come to me will not go to them? Would you do that? And on the face of it, that sounds like a good request, right? And this was what the response was. They have Moses, the law, and the prophets. It's another way of saying something like this. Why are you asking me to send more to your brothers when your brothers aren't even responding to the good things that God has already given to them? Maybe what they need to is to start responding favorably to what has been revealed by God to them. And then you will see God start revealing more of himself to them. But steward what he has already given to you. How we respond to God can affect whether or not, it can affect whether or not God is going to reveal more of himself to us. Sometimes he says we need to deal with what I've already given you so that you can get the more. Which takes us to the third thing. Knowing God is as much about our heart as it is about our mind. Knowing God is as much about our heart as it is about our mind. I mean, the truth is we cannot see what we don't want to see. I love what Norman Geisler said. He said, the same sun that hardens clay melts wax. But he went on to say this. He said, the difference in effect is what the sun is shining on, not in the sun itself. Now think about our heart. What is the sun shining on? Is it clay or is it wax? And because of that, this is why Jesus spoke in parables. This is the why. Think of what it says in verse 18. Listen to the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word about the kingdom and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the one sown along the path. So now let's start talking about heart conditions. Are you ready for that? What's your heart condition? I think the way that we could describe this first one is the hard heart. And you got to remember, biblically, the heart is the hub of who you are. It's the center of who you are. Another way of understanding the hard heart would be something like this. It's like trying to grow corn on concrete. It is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Let me give you some descriptions. And this was the thing that I'll ask as we go through each of the heart conditions. I just want you to ask this. Is this me? Is this me? What would be some characteristics of the hard heart? Here's the first. This is a person that is unconcerned with God or anything spiritual. I don't care. They don't give Jesus the least consideration because they've already made up their mind. And of course, Jesus doesn't make sense to them because his mind and the mind that they've already made up don't match. So all the worse for Jesus. I want to remind you of Pascal. Again, human beings must be known to be loved, but divine beings must be loved to be known. And when it comes to the hard heart, this is the thing we've got to remember. Since the seed doesn't get into the ground, it just sits on the top. It's not there wasn't seed thrown out. It was. It just sits on the top. And the birds come by and they've got snacks. Now, for a believer, this is what it looks like. Can you rebel against the work of the Holy Spirit in your heart today, tomorrow? The answer is, of course you can. And what that shows is the kind of ground that the seed is falling on in you. Things you just don't want to hear. Things you will not give up. For the unbeliever, it's the gospel itself. To have and to know Jesus and to love him. That's the hard heart. But there's more. Think of verse 20. He says, the one sown on rocky ground, that's the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy, but he has no root and it's short-lived. When distress or persecution comes because of the word, immediately he falls away. We could call this the shallow heart. It's one of the things, I'll be honest with you, it's one of the things that I always have a concern about And we are emotional beings. We are. I'm not concerned with people having an emotional experience with God. That's good, but it's not all that we are. And so I do get concerned when people have this explosive, emotional, religious experience, and 5 days later, you would never know they had it to begin with. That nothing had happened 5 days earlier. It was right back to where they were. But I want you to see this from the way they're described. There's no resistance offered to the seed, none. They're not pushing back. It's not like the hard ground. Strong emotional reactions. However, a shallow acceptance of Jesus holds on to the blessings, but ignores the cost of following him. And when they run into the cost of following him, they go, I just want another deep and exciting religious experience. And that's not what it means to follow him. They hear the message, they're moved by it, but the decision that they make doesn't last long. There's a great example that I think illustrates this. If you go over into the United Kingdom, it's a bit rainy over there, a bit rainy. The way that the trees are described over there typically is with very shallow roots, very shallow roots. And part of that is because the roots actually don't have to go deep to find a source of water. It's all right there. And so you have these trees with really shallow roots. And you can imagine what happens when a storm comes in, those trees just fall. Boom, they drop. They drop. We've got to be reminded of something here. And again, hear what I am saying, not what I'm not saying. I am not against a profound religious experience. I'm all for it. Paul had one of those on the Damascus Road. But look at the fruit of his life after. Look at the fruit of his life after. It's got to be about more than just that. Especially when we consider like the deeper teaching of Scripture, where what it means to really grow deeply in Jesus is we share in the fellowship of his suffering. The fellowship of his suffering. And then the roots really start to go. But there's more. There's a seed in verse 22, falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word and make it unfruitful. We could call this the crowded heart. The crowded heart. This is the person who hears the word, they believe it, but they let other things in their life choke out what it could be. Specifically, Jesus gives two examples here. One is the worries of this life. How many of you got a few of those today? One, maybe, right? The worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth. Two things he points out. He's like, be very careful. Be very careful. Here's a characteristic of this kind of heart, the crowded heart. You're genuinely interested. You are. But then you get home and you have money to earn, and the mortgage on the second home has created some stress. You know, club ball is added up, not just in money, but in time. And you're just exhausted. You understand what I'm saying? Here's what I'm getting at. Sometimes it's more about, with the crowded heart, it's not so much about outright rejecting God. It's just too busy for God. It's just too busy. It's not so much about rejection, it's about neglect. That might be a great way of understanding the crowded heart. But there's one more. It's to be preferred. Look at verse 23. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. We could call this the prepared heart. This is the one that's ready. Think about it like this. Here's a good description. When the word goes deep, it produces incredible fruit. That's change. And when you think about what this looks like for a follower of Jesus, it shows up in how you treat people. It shows up in your willingness to forgive. It shows up in your desire for more of him. In other words, it's noticeable. It's noticeable. So if Jesus has really taken like a deep root in you, it will be noticed. It might be noticed by your husband. It might be noticed by your wife. It might be noticed by your children. It might be noticed by your friend. But it's noticeable because here's why. There's no such thing as invisible fruit. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. But Jesus makes some distinctions here. He said there's those that yield 30 times. There's those that yield 60 times. Those that yield 100 times. You see, it's different, right? And some of that is basically measured on, well, when you think about it, the response. The response. And boy, this really got me thinking. I was thinking just this week about a friend who has prayed for his father to be saved, to know Jesus for 23 years. Every day he has prayed for his dad. Every day. Now I want you to think about this. Let's imagine you get to year, I don't know, let's make one up, 18. And you go, I mean, what in the world? I mean, how many times do I have to talk about this? Now, of course, you pray. And he would share with his dad and pray and share with his dad and pray and share with his dad. There was no quitting this guy. But you could probably imagine there are times he goes, all right, I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated here. Fair enough? Only for a couple of weeks ago to watch his dad give his life to Jesus. 23 years. I want you to think about that. What did it take? Well, here's what it took for his dad. It's the same thing that it took if you wanted to grow a garden. Had to get a tiller out and bust up the ground. You know what I mean? It was years of pulling out weeds of addiction and abuse. It was a lot. It's a long story. I'm just giving you this much of it. But God never quit on that man. And God never quit through his son. Never. And 23 years later, he bows the knee to Jesus. That's one story. But I also think of another one. Now, this goes back to my time in New Orleans. It was really something. I mean, a professor at the seminary, but also pastored a church in Gentilly, the Gentilly area of New Orleans. And we partnered with a really cool ministry called Bethel Colony. Pastor Mel was the one that headed it up. And these were people where we went into the French Quarter and we worked with drug addicts and we worked with alcoholics and we worked with prostitutes and all kinds of things to get them out of that way of life and on track to a better way of life. And there was this one dude that I tell you, if you looked at him, you would think that guy will murder me right now. He looked rough. I mean, there wasn't one part of his body that wasn't ink. And I'm talking about when his head was shaved, it was all up the side of his head. It was something. But that man gave his life to Jesus. He did. On the streets of the French Quarter, comes off the street, goes into Bethel Colony, and immediately gets involved with what we called the Jackson Square ministry, which was on Sunday mornings. We went down into Jackson Square. That's where all of y'all go for beignets and cafe au lait, right? But we were going there for a different reason. It's because we were ministering to the homeless, the drug addicts and whatnot. It's what we were doing. He became a part of that ministry. He jumped in. When you showed up on a Sunday morning, he would be the guy that was there to greet you at the door. Good morning, tatted up. And you're like, good morning. Because everybody thought, man, that guy, I think he'd kill me. He looked rough. But there was a radical transformation of that man's heart. When he gave his heart to Jesus, he changed. A few years later, he comes up to me and he says, hey, look, I've really been thinking about this and it's time for me to go. I said, well, where in the world are you going to go? He goes, the Lord has put me in this Jackson Square ministry. He said, it's time for you to go do that in Houma, Louisiana. He goes, I'm out. I'm out. This is the kind of stuff God can do. This is the kind of stuff. But I think what you're hearing is this: the dirt matters. Are y'all tracking? The dirt matters. So what type of dirt are you? Are you distracted? Do you let your business or everything else choke out what Jesus wants to do in you? Are you prepared? Are you seeing 30, 60, 100-fold? Praise God, right? Praise God. I want to share this thought with you as we close. Peter Crave said this. He said, we sinned, I sinned, for no reason but an incomprehensible lack of love. And he saved us for no reason but an incomprehensible excess of love. That's my Jesus.
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.